This is part 2 of the Jennings investigation. The story did not end with the first discoveries. In many ways, that was only where the deeper questions began. In small communities, truth rarely arrives in a single moment. It unfolds slowly, through memory, through repetition, through the quiet determination of those who refuse to stop paying attention. If you want to continue following investigations like this, you can subscribe and stay with this channel as the full picture begins to take shape. Because what you are about to hear is not simply a continuation, it is where uncertainty starts to form a pattern. And once patterns begin to surface, they are difficult to ignore. By the time Jennings began to notice the shift, it was already underway. Nothing dramatic marked the transition. No sirens splitting the night. No sudden declaration that danger had taken root. Instead, awareness settled gradually into the town's nervous system, quietly rewiring routines people had followed for years. Front doors stayed locked a little earlier. Phone calls lasted longer than necessary. Headlights turning onto gravel roads were watched, until they disappeared completely from view. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was recognition, without confirmation. Because long before patterns are acknowledged publicly, they are felt privately. And in Jennings, that private understanding was beginning to harden. Early March 2007, spring approached without ceremony. The air remained heavy with moisture, clinging to porches and storefront windows, like condensation that refused to clear. Traffic still moved along Highway 26. Children still crossed cracked sidewalks on their way to school. From a distance, routine looked intact. But inside conversations, in kitchens, in parked cars, in low-lit bars, people were beginning to count. Not aloud, not formally, just mentally noting who had been seen recently and who had not. Kristen Gary Lopez was 21, small-framed, quick in her movements. Someone who had grown accustomed to navigating instability with quiet resilience. Like many young women in Jennings at the time, her life existed within overlapping circles. Friends who became family, streets that doubled as shortcuts and risks, late nights that blurred into early mornings, without clear boundaries between safety and exposure. Her absences were not immediately alarming. Kristen had disappeared before, days at a time, sometimes longer. In towns shaped by economic hardship and addiction, disappearance can become normalized, not accepted, but absorbed into the rhythm of survival. Still, something about this silence lingered differently. Time stretched. Phone calls went unanswered. Familiar hangouts produced only shrugs and uncertain recollections. The unease that had been quietly building since the earlier deaths tightened its grip. Then, nearly 10 days after she was last seen, her family reported her missing. It was not panic that followed. It was a slow, tightening focus, as if Jennings itself were leaning forward, trying to hear what the future might already be whispering. March 18th, a fisherman moving along the Petit Jean Canal noticed something suspended in the water. At first glance, it could have been debris caught in the current, a branch, discarded clothing. Anything ordinary enough to dismiss, but ordinary explanations dissolved quickly under closer inspection. Kristen's body was found nude, partially submerged in the still, opaque water that reflected sky without revealing depth. There were no immediate answers, no clear narrative investigators could present that would restore the fragile sense of order the town had been trying to preserve. Toxicology would later reveal drugs and alcohol in her system. The official cause of death remained undetermined. On paper, ambiguity. In lived experience, another fracture. Because residents could not ignore the geography. Again, the canals. Again, the isolated roads branching away from visibility. Again, terrain that seemed designed to conceal movement rather than document it. Patterns do not announce themselves. They accumulate quietly until coincidence begins to feel deliberate. In the days that followed, small details surfaced in conversations that rarely reached official reports. A white pickup truck seen idling near familiar routes, headlights slowing where no turn was required, a presence that lingered just long enough to register in memory without offering proof. 2 suspects were briefly arrested, questioned, released. Evidence did not hold. Timelines blurred. Certainty dissolved into procedural language that felt distant from the emotional reality residents were living through. What unsettled many was not simply Kristen's death, but the perception that urgency itself seemed inconsistent. Measured responses can create reassurance, but they can also create space for doubt to grow. And in small communities, doubt travels faster than official conclusions. Jennings did not erupt into panic. It recalibrated. Women began coordinating rides home, without formally acknowledging why. Parents repeated instructions that sounded casual, but carried new insistence. Call when you get there. Stay on the main road. Don't stop for anyone. Ordinary sentences, delivered with unfamiliar weight, because beneath the routines people were trying to maintain, a realization was forming. Quiet, persistent, unavoidable. The earlier deaths had not been an ending. They had been an introduction. And now, with Kristen Gary Lopez found in the same kind of silent landscape that had already begun shaping communal fear, Jennings could no longer pretend. The story was standing still, somewhere beyond the reach of porch lights. In morning traffic noise, something was continuing to move, patiently, confidently, unseen. And before the town could fully process this third loss, another name was already approaching the timeline. Recognition begins to take shape. Jennings did not have time to recover from Kristen's death. Grief in small towns rarely follows a clean timeline. It overlaps. It lingers in unfinished conversations and cautious glances, long after the official condolences have faded. By the spring of 2007, something else had begun to surface. Not panic, but a sharpening awareness that daily life required closer attention than before. People were watching now, not dramatically, not obsessively, just enough to notice what once blended easily into the background. Whitney Charlene Dubois was 26 years old. Friends described her as observant, someone who understood how fragile stability could be in Jennings, and adjusted accordingly. She knew the rhythms of the town, which roads emptied too quickly after sunset, which neighborhoods grew quieter than expected, which faces could be trusted, and which interactions required caution. Like many of the young women connected to the earlier victims, Whitney's world moved along familiar paths: local bars, friends' houses, convenience store parking lots, lit by fluorescent bulbs that hummed louder than the conversations beneath them. Life was not easy, but it was navigable, until suddenly, it wasn't. On May 12, 2007, Whitney's body was discovered near a dirt access road, not far from the same canal systems that had already begun to shape the town's growing unease. The landscape itself was becoming part of the story. Flat stretches of land where sound traveled strangely, tree lines that swallowed visibility within a few steps, waterways that reflected moonlight but concealed what lay beneath their surface. She had been reported missing only days earlier. This time, the delay between disappearance and discovery felt shorter, more immediate, as if Jennings was learning to anticipate bad news before it fully arrived. Investigators noted that Whitney had been strangled. It was one of the first moments. The violence felt unmistakably personal, not ambiguous, not easily explained by circumstance alone. For residents already struggling to make sense of the earlier deaths, this detail altered perception, because strangulation implies proximity, control, intent. It suggests an encounter that unfolded in real time, one human presence overpowering another. In silence, that realization spread quietly through conversations that rarely reached official transcripts. What unsettled people further was how familiar the surrounding terrain felt. Again, the back roads. Again, locations that required local knowledge to navigate efficiently. Again, spaces where a vehicle could stop without attracting immediate attention. Coincidence was becoming harder to sustain as a comforting explanation. Some residents began mentally retracing recent weeks. Who had been seen driving late at night? Which unfamiliar vehicles had appeared more than once? Why did certain routes feel increasingly charged with unease? Even during daylight hours? No formal investigation could capture the emotional mathematics taking place inside living rooms across Jennings. Because pattern recognition in communities rarely begins with evidence, it begins with instinct. Whitney's death deepened that instinct into something heavier. Parents tightened curfews. Friends insisted on walking each other to their cars, even in well-lit parking lots. Women who once navigated the town independently started coordinating movements with subtle precision. No town meetings were called, no public declarations made, but daily behavior shifted, as if guided by an unspoken agreement. Something was wrong, and it was not passing quickly. Officially, each case remained separate. Different circumstances, different timelines, different investigative files accumulating on desks, far from the humid streets where fear was being lived. Yet residents could not ignore how social circles overlapped. Many of the victims knew one another, not intimately in every case, but through shared environments shaped by poverty, addiction, and survival. To outsiders, these connections could appear coincidental. To those who lived there, they formed a web of familiarity that felt increasingly significant. By late May, nightfall in Jennings began to carry a new emotional texture. Streetlights flickered over intersections that felt emptier than before. Dogs barked at passing headlights, then fell abruptly silent. Engines idling along gravel shoulders seemed louder in the stillness, and inside darkened bedrooms. Sleep became more fragmented. Residents found themselves replaying timelines, assembling invisible maps of where each woman had last been seen, where conversations had ended, where movement had stopped, where certainty had dissolved. We have come to the end of part 2. In part 3, we'll discuss about the remaining victims. Please like, subscribe, and comment so that when we release part 3, you will be notified. Thanks for watching.